Hi, hello, welcome to my corner of the internet. My name is Fats. This is my favorite video to make of the month, and that is my monthly favorites video. I read a bunch of books, and then at the end of the month, I tally up what books are my favorites. Now, in my worst months, my favorites of the month could be a bunch of 1 stars. Like if I have 15 DNFs and I only finish 4 books, those books will make it to the favorite. So this doesn't mean these are all 5 stars. These just means that they are my favorite of the month. And I know I just started this with a disclaimer that they may not all be 5 stars, but no, all of these were a good time for different reasons, every single one of them. The first couple books I want to talk about, though, are going to be my subscriber recommendations, because subscribers came through this past month. I was in the slumpiest of slumps, the emotion trenches, and I just needed some books that were a good time. So I had asked for some books to give me a good time, and they really did what they did. A lot of times, maybe a book will reach my 5-star favorites because it made me deep think. These first 3 books were entertaining, fast-paced, really got me interested, really hooked me. The first 3 books that I want to bring up as my favorites were ones that really brought me out of that, oh my goodness, I just need something to have fun with slump. First, I would like to bring up a manga that I have started. I've only gotten through 2 books so far, and that is Ooku. This is a story. This manga takes place in Edo era Japan, in which a horrible red face pox plague gets rid of 75% of men. Due to this, the social structure of Japan has changed a little bit. And now in positions of power, now as heads of household, women rest. But this does a little bit more in the town than just put women in positions of power. Now, you are a really lucky woman to be able to have a child. Since there are so little men, it shows power if you have access to seed that is used. A man's seed, being able to have a child, be able to have a family, is now how you access power. So, this tale hangs out in the inner chambers of our shogun. And you get to see, so the shogun, mind you, men as a commodity are valuable. And to flaunt this power, to flaunt this higher standing, our shogun has an inner chambers of the most beautiful men, multiple men who save themselves and who just kind of hang out and wait for the shogun. She's not utilizing all this seed and all these bodies, so that's not what this is about. I have been enjoying Ooku because you get like a play into politics. There's humor in it. It's funny. You do get to see this inner workings of the shogun. You get to discuss power structures. And on a speculative standpoint, it's really interesting to see how the society is being put forth without men in this position of power, because it's not like the whole world has adjusted in this way. Because our female shogun interacts with other cultures and other powers where men still are fine. They still rest at the top. It's just interesting. And like I said, it's a lot of fun. In the first book, you follow a young man who is a samurai. He has a poor family and he gets called into living in the inner chambers, which he does, even though he loves another woman. That other woman was never rich enough to have a son. Like I told you, it is a very much a standing of power in order to have a man and have access to building a family. And so he gets put into the inner chambers. Now, the inner chambers is a mix of people wanting to vie for the top, people wanting to vie for the shogun's attention, what it means to have to portray yourself in a certain way. It's It was great. It was so good. Meanwhile, in the second book, you jump back in time to the very first female shogun and what happened there and getting to know her. And oh my goodness, my heart goes out to her. And I really hope that in the third, I get to stay in this timeline, because with it, in this like power play in the play of politics, there is a young monk who goes to meet the shogun. He's been called to meet the shogun. And then the shogun's like personal staff tricks this young monk. She's like, hey, I'm gonna need you to give up your station. I'm gonna need you to stay here. And he's like, no. I have the Buddha in me. I'm traveling. I want to help people. And she's like, have sex with one of these wenches. And he's like, oh, no, I would not have sex with one of these wenches again, because that'll take me out of my monkhood. And then this woman kills one of his like friends. And she's like, I'm going to keep killing your friends until you have sex with one of these wenches. Therefore, giving up your position as head monk guy. And you have to stay in these inner chambers. The play of politics and the social play of this is so much fun. Also, like the little bits of banter, the like getting to know everybody. There's so many different people that I see as puzzle pieces in this story, and I really am excited to continue. The first female shogun is like, there's so much depth to that character, and I'm so invested in this monk. The only thing is that in this book, the monk guy is present, but we've gotten a new shogun. So something has to happen to her. Hold on. I just put that. Something has to happen to her. Oh my goodness. Am I going to cry later? Oh no. Oh, I'm excited. I have 2 more books of this in my house. I think it's a pretty long manga, but right now, it's going so well. The art style, I really love it. I love the characters. The only thing I can say that I do find a little funny is they're using like thou and wouldst, like the way that the translator has handled this like old time Japan. They're using thou and wouldst thee, and that's kind of how this is written out. But it's kind of funny. It doesn't make sense to have to do that, but I find it funny. The next subscriber recommendation that made into my favorites, and y'all all knew this was going to make it to my favorites, Only for the Week by Natasha Bishop. Let me tell you something. Rome could have my drawers. He can have them. Let me tell you right now. So you open up with Dr. Janelle Cross. She is the sister as well as the maid of honor of one of the biggest bridezillas. However, this bridezilla, they've all brought their friends to Tulum. A little bit of drama added in. Bridezilla and sister of Dr. Janelle Cross is marrying Janelle's ex. So one sister broke up with a guy and then he got together with the other sister. And sister number 1 is the maid of honor for this marriage. Her older sister has that. And in Tulum, before the actual wedding and the actual services and all that, they've come together for a week of just enjoying the time, enjoying Tulum, and enjoying the hotel and all of that, right? Well, Janelle and Rome. So Rome was the groom's old roommate. Rome avoided Janelle for some reason, never was around the house the whole time she was dating her ex. And Janelle thinks Rome just doesn't really want to be around her. So when they come up to this, she's like, hey, I know you don't like me. He's like, no. We're not playing that miscommunication. Rome is like, I liked you a little too much for you to be my homie's girl. And so then Rome, after they have a little bit of a soiree, and let me tell you about this soiree. The way that Rome was talking to me, forget Janelle Cross. The way Rome was looking me in my eyes and talking to me? Okay. I'm sweating. It's like 100 degrees in here. So the way Rome was treating me and talking to me. So here's what he says. They have a little bit of a soiree, right? Let me stay on track. I'm in Rome land. So they have their little bit of a soiree. And Rome says, I want to keep doing this. So hear me out. You're obviously stressed out with Bridezilla over here. You're obviously not having a good time. You're obviously struggling. You obviously need stress relief. So you can call on me anytime you need some stress relief, anytime you need to talk, anytime you need to get out of your head, call me. Let's enjoy this week. So initially, she is hitting him up. She's hitting him up in like I'm stressed out. Let me see you in the janitor's closet. But it becomes more than that. It becomes him providing her stress relief is really providing this ear. It's really providing her a space to escape to. And of course, you like weave through him being a support and he is such a caregiver in and out of the bedroom. He was taking care. Let me stop drooling over Rome, but like, let me tell you, what's I need a big boy. I need She was over here describing Rome like he was just like a bear. Chest out. Filling up his seat. This was a man. Rome is a man. That's the thing. There wasn't miscommunication. There wasn't any of that. He was just here. It was just a good time, which I love. This was such an adult thing. Like that whole, you get the third act breakup. Forget all of that. Only thing that was getting broken in this book was bags. Quality content. Loved it. The next subscriber recommendation I want to bring up was such a life changer. Oh my goodness, the next subscriber recommendation I want to bring up. First of all, you know who you are. I cannot thank you enough. And the thing about it is, you recommended me this book twice. And the first time I got it, the library wanted it back immediately. And then I forgot about it. You recommended it again. Thank you so much. If you recommend me something, I'm never upset if like I ask for recommendations and you recommend them at that moment, because I'll ask and I'll put some on, and then the library, like my library world is so chaotic. I'll have to return things. I'll get things back. So when I ask recommendations, if you haven't seen me read it, doesn't mean I don't want the rec. It just means I picked up 5 or like I picked up a few, and maybe the library was going to put me on hold for a minute and I didn't want to. Just remind me later. I don't keep track of these things good enough. But back to the matter at hand. You recommended me this book again. I know why you did. Because you knew this was going to be a 5-star duology for me. Each book individually, I want to rate each book like a 4.5 star. The duology together, 5-star duology, I think I like the second book more. This duology is the Blood Like Fate duology by Liselle Sambury. You have Black characters, you have magic, you have first love, you have ancestors, you have blood magic, you have like the building of community, and you have so many important topics brought up. You have side plots, you have side characters, but every side character I was invested in. I was invested in all of these characters, and I want to say that's why this duology did so much for me personally. I listened to the audiobook of these, and the audiobooks were fantastic. The narrative audiobooks, it's the same person for both, which I loved, crushed it out of this park. The writing was great. The experience was great. If you need an audio, I highly recommend. I also think this would be very enjoyable reading. It is a great time. It is YA that feels YA. No spice. You just really get to enjoy. It does feel like a coming of age story. I haven't told you what it's about. So there comes a point in a witch's life where she gets given a task by an ancestor in order for her to get her magic. Our main character has reached that point in life. She's reached her task. And she fails it. And for the first time in forever, an ancestor says that she'll give her another chance. However, if she fails this task, her entire family will lose magic. Now, magic is how they live. Magic runs their household. Magic flows through them. Who they are and their connection to their ancestors comes from magic. These ties that they have, the way that they fit into the community and who they are is so deeply linked to magic. So for it to be put on a high schooler's plate, that if you don't pass your task, your whole family loses magic, is insane. So she has to pass it. The task at hand, though, is to destroy your first love. The issue is, she's never been in love before. So she's racing to fall in love, racing to meet this person, racing to catch these feelings in order to destroy them. The second book, so this first book I do feel like is very tied into the family, how the family works, how our main character exists in this smaller unit. The second book takes it further, and it's how they exist within a community. And I want to say, first of all, the covers. Oh my gosh, the covers are so beautiful. To have a character like that on the cover is so beautiful. Love it. Second of all, the attention to culture and food in here was so well done. There's the food references, cooking, this connection, the relationships, the way that you interact with those around you, the way that you think about your future, the way that you think about your present. I loved this book. Go read it. Don't ask me any questions. I can't tell you any more. But I can say there was a point a few months ago where I was complaining about how I don't think I've read a good villain recently. The villain of this, the concept of evil in this, chef's kiss. Loved it. The last two books that I would like to bring up in my favorites, one of them I talked about in a vlog pretty extensively, so I'm not going to talk about it too much today. The only thing I did today was I marked a page because I didn't ever read you any sections in that vlog. I will be putting the vlog up in the cards, and I'll also be linking it in the description box if you want more of like live reactions to this book and how I was feeling in the moment, any initial thoughts. Because at this point, I've sat on it for like 2-3 weeks. So I've had some time to really resonate with this story. And it actually went up in rating for me because, well, the book I'm talking about is I Cheerfully Refuse by Lief Enger. This is just so beautifully written. This story follows Rainey, who is on the hunt for his lost bookseller wife. And he does so in a very Orphean tale in which he boards his ship, the Flower, and goes on an adventure facing other odd characters, facing lots of people, bumping into different towns, and interacting with people here and there along this trek in a hunt for his wife, the woman that he loves. Now, what makes this so beautiful was this was such an empathetic and kind and loving and endearing story. There was such a tenderness to a dystopian tale because this is dystopian literature, and I read so much dystopian literature that's angry, that's speaking to something. And while this presented everything, it felt more like a parable. It felt more like a ballad. It has that literary flow of words, and it was so beautifully done. I listened to the audiobook and I got the book just to see how it felt on paper. I do prefer it on paper, but the audiobook is well done. If you're the kind of person who likes to listen to the audiobook and have it in front of you, I think that is the perfect way of reading this. Get to hear it, get to read it, interact with those things at the same time. I think there's so much to say for a book that feels different heard versus read, and this one is it. Oh, this is such a special book. I would say, however, this book only works for you if you like the writing style. So I marked a page. Now, the reason I chose the page I did was one thing I personally loved about this book is how much the lake felt like a character, how much his boat felt like a character. And while you get all of these other interactions, those characters were just like a silly little plot point almost. Whereas Lake Superior was such... There was a depth to Lake Superior, for lack of better wording, pun intended. There was such a depth of Lake Superior, so much to this lake, so much to the actual nature around him, so much to the ecosystem of sailing a ship. So if you love attention given to that, if you love eco-fiction and eco-nonfiction, read this. It's so enjoyable. The dystopian efforts of it do feel satirical rather than punching something down your throat. I didn't feel like this was weighty on me. There was, like I said, very tender. It made me like look outside and smile. Here's the section I have for you. It is on page 159, just so you can get a feel of the writing style. If you don't like the writing style, don't even do it. It's a pretty meandering book due to how it sounds. Page 159. I'm not even going to tell you what's happening. Just kind of feel the words. I scarcely can describe such wind in terms of fear. I don't even like to remember it. Earlier, I'd begun to imagine the lake on my side, a protective demigod, the queen herself, adorned with thunder, stepping between me and those who'd have my skin. So much for all that. Deceived is what I felt, and scared, and it seemed very hard that I would find the slates, locate the precise hidey hole Lark and I had sheltered in so long ago, only to have it occupied by enemies and have the lake turn every bit as hostile as they were. The moment I was free of the island's wind shadow, the full blast took me. I can tell you Superior had forgot she was a lake at all. No, she was like her sister, the North Atlantic, and her cousins, the hurricanes who pull down houses and urge barns into the sea. We imagine great storms building a wall of water, seen at a distance with its crest in the sky. But what I saw were rows of waves lining up in ranks, each higher than the last, and so near to one another they looked flattened, as if glimpsed through a telescope. The boat began to heave as the waves lifted the stern and moved beneath the hull, which wallowed in the troughs until the next surge came. Soon we were driven along at great speed, though no sails flew, and I had to take on the tiller or the boat would swing sideways to the marching swells, and that would be the end. A day or two of this would sweep us against the rocks of Michigan. I remember then Lark telling me about a captain slowing his storm-driven ship by tying a rope to the stern, then lashing it to whatever he could find, shattered spars, oars, torn sails, and flinging his mess overboard to trail behind. A sea anchor, she called it. All right, then. I wadded up most of my blankets, dug into the lockers, and found 2 canvas folding chairs, a broken bronze lantern past repair, 3 or 4 inflatable fenders, and most importantly, a great coil of rope along which I tied all these sacrifices at intervals like beads on a string. Cleaning it astern, I hove this trash parade into our churning wake. At first I despaired, because as we plunged, as though jettisoning the weight had only made us faster, then abruptly the boat seemed to recognize its extra burden. It crouched aft, slowed perceptibly, and went at a slight oblique with the waves. Tying off the tiller, I was able to get below and get a breath. It's like... I don't know, I don't care about sailing, but this made me love Lake Superior. This is such a love letter to the world that we live in. Read it, please. You know how a second ago I said I had 2 more books? I lied. I now have 2 more books. Let's talk about The Martian by Andy Weir. This story, you know how I said you won't like this if you don't like the writing style? I want to emphasize that even more with The Martian, because this is told in the perspective of Mark Watney, a space astronaut who accidentally got left behind on Mars. And this is told primarily through his logs. So it's just him all alone on Mars trying to make it, leaving logs of how his day went, his little inner monologues, his inner jokes. Now, here's why it worked for me. his stupid little dry sense of humor and what felt like condescension, I actually enjoyed. The way he spoke, his little snide remarks, his little parentheticals, the way his tone came off was funny to me. He made like stupid little jokes and he was a little ridiculous. And it wasn't like, for some reason, this dry humor made me laugh out loud. I caught myself laughing out loud quite a few times. There are moments that I was like, ooh, why did we have to include that? But really, you have this astronaut stuck on Mars and left and right, different hitches are thrown into his plan. This isn't a fast story because you do just get him like growing potatoes and him trying to figure out how to make it to the next day and him figuring out how to make water. And I don't care if Andy Weir isn't a scientist. Something about all the like scientific and mathy points in this felt logical. I was like, this is chemistry. Like the way that he created water, the way that he went about creating water, his little mishaps, his little experiments, the way that he went about getting into planting and the way he went about creating soil, the way he went about fertilizing. All of it felt so scientific in a way that wasn't too burdensome. But it was not a fast-paced read. There are no aliens. There are no crazy behemoths on there. There's not too many. Like, the stakes are high. Don't get me wrong. He's gonna die if he doesn't make it another day. The stakes are high. It was mostly me getting a laugh, and I don't know, I was really rooting for him. I was rooting for this guy. And it was such a simplistic story in a sense. I don't know what about it just worked for me. And I really think it was his tone. Let me think. I'm going to try to find a section. Just any section really will give you his tone. But nothing too big. Okay, so here's a section. This is him. Again, he's just kind of like trying to make it, putting things together, patching things up. This is just him on Mars. Okay. I'll be playing with high voltage power tomorrow. Can't imagine anything going wrong with that. Log entry Sol 193. I managed not to kill myself today, even though I was working with high voltage. Like, I don't know what about it. Like, is it just like the dry humor works for me? Here's another section. Sigh. Just once I'd like something to go as planned, you know? Mars keeps trying to kill me. Well, Mars didn't electrocute Pathfinder, so I'll amend that. Mars and my stupidity keep trying to kill me. Okay, enough self-pity. I'm not doomed. Things will be harder than planned. I have all I need to survive, and Hermes is still on the way. And you like, it's not constantly that dry sense of humor. You do, like I said, have sections of like science and bits. And then you get that like little punchline. I don't know what it is. I do think this just matches my personal dry sense of humor. It worked for me. I enjoyed it. It's not the typical sci-fi I read. I will be picking up Project Hail Mary, but I hear a lot of people don't like Andy Weir because of this tone. And it is a little bit condescending, but it's not the author speaking to me. The way he wrote his characters. Like, this is just a botanist engineer guy who's stuck on Mars with nothing but a few old 70s disco songs to keep him company. It's a fun time. It took me a few days to read, which for me is a bit of a while, but it was because like I was excited to get back to him, but I didn't need to hurry up and get through this story. I just kind of like took a section of Another Day on Mars, which I enjoyed. It's always nice to pick up books that I don't feel the need to like rush through. And that brings me to the final book on my favorites. I don't have the physical copy. I did have to return it. But the book is... This book is, I want to say, a 5-star. I have to give this book a 5-star. If I took anything off of it, there's no reason to. I couldn't think of a reason. It just feels, sometimes I feel like I throw out 5 stars and I need to be a little bit more conserving of my 5 stars. And I'm just in February and I feel like I've thrown out so many 5 stars already. But who cares? I'm reading some quality books. That book is A Spear Cuts Through Water. This book was absolutely breathtaking as an experience. It was so immersive, but this wasn't a silly, goofy, turn your brain off time. You know, the kind of fantasy with storytelling that's so rich that you have to be present for it. This was that. This is another book I didn't want to power through. I really took this one slowly because my goodness. So the story is told in a few different perspectives, which can feel a little discombobulating. This one I also listened to on audiobook, but I just ordered the print version so that I can own it because I need to see it on paper. I think I want to say this one would do best on paper due to these different perspectives. This story comes to you in a theater that exists on the cusp between worlds. Now you have a few different, when I say perspectives, I mean also person change. So you have a third person, a second person, and a first person experience going through this book. Your first person is the chorus of the people on stage. Your third person is the story of what is being told on stage. And your first person is as a viewer of this story. This was experimental in a way that worked beautifully. The writing was so beautiful. There was a statement. I wrote it down. Literally one quote got me. I was at the 18% mark and it said, "This is a love story to its blade dented bone." Oh my goodness, rip your heart out. This is beautiful. The writing just really wove itself in such a lush way. And then it like trickled out. It didn't really just rush at me and expect me to get along on this path and this journey, but it really trickled along. And then you would get the chorus and you would get these voices. And you know how when you sit in a theater and you experience all of these senses, that's how I felt in this. There's this one thing that I think about a lot. There was a very, very pronounced composer who wrote something to be performed in a large amphitheater, right? Totally off topic, but I promise you I'm going to get back to what I'm saying. And in his production, there's a section of his writing, of his composition, of his orchestrated musical piece where it's silent. Nobody plays. They set down their instruments and they just allow people to exist. And he says that one thing he wanted to portray was that music is different everywhere you listen to it, because for those moments of silence, he says the music is this person coughing over there and this person shifting in their seat over here, somebody ruffling in their purse over here. And that's what brings together a musical experience. And that's what brings together his compositional piece. It's not just the violins and the strings on stage. It is also who you sit around and who you experience it with and the sounds and the echoes. That is how he portrayed his orchestra. That is how I feel A Spear Cuts Through Water really approached storytelling. I felt not just this story and not just what was on stage or around me or this tale. I felt so immersed in with others. I don't know how to explain it. There was a plurality to me being able to experience this story that I think was so well done. I had to purchase it. I literally finished it, ran to my bookstore. They didn't have it in the bookstore. And so I asked them to special order it for me so that I could get it in. Because I need to see this on paper. And what's weird about it is, I like to annotate books. I don't want to annotate this one. I just need to see these words written down. I need to see this story taken out. I'm obsessed. Oh, this was such a good month. And I think what made it so good was I'm always so proud of myself when my favorites feel like I got a little bit of everything in my month. And this month really feels like I dipped my toes in a little bit of it all. Thank you for coming. Thank you for hanging out. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to be building my spring TBR, which is crazy. I have to plan these things in advance because when I put them on hold at the library, it takes a while for some of them. So can we use today's comment section? Tell me some of your favorites, but can we dedicate it to things you want to recommend me for my next round of subscriber recommendations? So please use this comment section. This is the one I'm going to be referencing because like I said, I get distracted. I can never remember where you recommend something. If you haven't seen me talk about a book, recommend it below, and I will be using this comment section as my reference for my next chunk of subscriber recs, and my next TBR, my spring TBR, will be built from you today. Thank you for hanging out. Please comment so that I have some subscriber recs to choose from. You know my taste. You know me better than I know me. Like, look at this. You know me better than I know me. The only thing I can say is I have a lot of very heavy fantasy world building things in my next few weeks. So I don't know if I can mentally take on any heavy fantasy world building. I also cannot take on any more series at this point. So if you comment down below and you give me a subscriber rec that I can take into my next TBR, please no series. And I don't know if I have the capacity for heavy world building, or if you do want to recommend me something with heavy world building, please just note that so that I know going into it, so that I can kind of pace myself with all of my big fantasies. Thank you so much for hanging out. I will talk to you next time.